Good evening and welcome to the Select Board meeting of Monday, January 21st. My name is Jim Lehan. I am joined by my fellow board members Anita Mecklenburg and Kevin Roach. Would you please stand and join me in honoring our country with the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Wow. It's been a long day. Yeah. Welcome to our visitors. I do believe we have one gentleman that wants to give some public comment. So we welcome you. Come up to the chair, grab a comfy one with the new armrests. And as our policy, you know that we welcome public input. We are not in a position to respond,
I understand.
but we will certainly take your words to heart.
I have to tell you my name and address.
Your
right?
name and address, yes, sir. Yes, and for those that don't know, yes, Ed, it's nice to see you.
It's Ed 138 Red Maple Run. The question I had, and I did get an answer, but I think it's good for other people to hear just for the clarification. It was a question on the warrant. And to me, the way the warrant was worded, where it's asking for the amounts to be required for bonds issued in order to pay for costs of construction, reconstruction, architectural / engineering and project cost, sounded to me like if this were to pass, we were approving the amounts for construction. That's how I interpreted it when I read it. So if Justin just clarified it, but I think it would be worthwhile if the audience could hear that clarification as well, because I think it could be misunderstood.
Okay. I do, with permission of the board, I think that's one that we can answer.
Yeah.
Because I can see where it's confusing. A lot of times, the warrant articles are all-encompassing, and they're broad in definition, so they cover a lot of components of what particular issue may be there, but only a partial component of that is what we're voting on. Justin, if you want to elaborate on that.
Yep. I think the only addition I'd say, in particular the language that people see on the ballot, particularly, we get that language directly from our bond counsel. There's specific language that we have to incorporate. So those decisions are sort of made in collaboration, understand what the project may be. So we get that language from bond counsel. But actually town meeting, for instance, voted for an actual appropriation amount. Nuance with Mass General Law, you can't put an appropriation amount on a debt exclusion vote, but town meeting voted for the schematic design amount that is being considered. So you're not funding the full project.
Articles will appear very broad in nature on occasion, and then when it comes to time of vote, they're narrowed down as to what the specific issue is before us and what the amount is. It has to have a specific amount in order to be brought forward. So I can understand why that's confusing. When we go into executive session, sometimes we read this litany of reasons why we're going into it, only which one applies. And it's kind of the process we're forced to use under subject of law. So if that helps, point well taken. Yeah. Is there any other public comment this evening? Seeing none, Justin, we will turn this over to you.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Sorry about that.
Okay.
I have the other copy here.
Okay.
So the first item on the board's agenda is sort of it's a good opportunity. We have Karen Edwards and I believe some members of the COA board who are going to appear to talk about their branding project. I don't want to go into too much detail because I want Karen to take the opportunity to talk about how we got here. But we did receive a grant to fund this project, so I will toss it to Karen.
Feel free
to speak about this project. Hopefully.
Good, not on the screen.
She's muted.
I don't think she's here.
No, she is.
Oh, she is?
Zoom.
Oh, okay.
Karen, I think you're muted.
No, she's not muted anymore.
Well, it seems we're having another.
Karen, hold on a sec. I see you talking. I think we're having a little issue here. And if we do, then I will speak for Karen.
Well, Well, Justin, maybe you can at least give it the background of it, and we can, and, yeah. Why don't you go through the background of it, and then Karen can jump in when she's available.
Sure. So the town received a grant of $7,500 from the Mass Council on Aging for public awareness for the COA. So as part of that project, I believe Karen, along with her board members, they wanted to inform the board of how these funds are going to be utilized. They're getting a consultant to do a branding project regarding the COA. So in the board's packet is information regarding that branding project. They're using Atkin Associates, or Aiken, for the strategy and sort of the project management there. If the board were to proceed with this, they did have a contract that was that they're asking to have Karen execute, so the board should authorize Karen to execute the contract if the board does want to proceed. Like I said, this is a grant-funded project, so I really thought, and Karen thought, it was a good opportunity for us to highlight what's going on in the COA and their efforts there.
Well,
You know,
rather
we could
than
delay,
continuing to delay, has the board had a chance to review this? Everyone had a chance to take a look at it?
Yes.
All right, do we have any questions?
No,
The only thing was an assumption that I brought when I was reading, that the goal of it is to get more people to access the senior center. But other than that, it looks excellent, and I wanted to make sure to commend Karen and her team for getting those monies for us. That's amazing.
I concur. I read the material. I'm comfortable with it.
there's going to be no additional cost to the town. This is all going to be covered with the
It's all
grant.
part of the grant. Yep.
Fully covered by the grant, yes.
Yep.
Karen, I think we're going to let you off the hook. I'm sorry for the,
See what, if it works now.
I'm sorry?
See if it works now, I think, see if she can talk.
All right, we'll see if we can give it a sec here then.
No.
Oh, wait.
All right. Is the board comfortable with going forward with this?
Yes.
Do I have a
Yes.
motion?
I move that we authorize Karen Edwards to execute the contract with Aiken Strategy for a branding project agreement.
Do I have a second?
I second.
Further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Karen, it was a wonderful presentation.
Thank you,
very much.
Karen.
I'm sorry for the technical difficulties, but it's a great project. Good luck with it, and well done.
Well, what we'll do is, because I thought this was a good opportunity for the board to have an opportunity to speak with Karen, as you know, at a future board meeting, I'll invite Karen again.
Yeah.
And we can talk about it further.
That would be great.
Have a
Yep.
come in and person it. Good.
Great.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yep.
Okay.
The next agenda item is to consider the approving the useful life of the fire ladder truck. I happen to run into some questions regarding this, so I'm going to invite Dan Vicente, who's our treasurer collector, and Todd Lindmark, our finance director, just sort of give you a little bit background on how these decisions are made, how bans and sort of bonding goes along. In the board's packet, I gave a little bit more information that we usually have, and it's actually for this reason. There's certain guidelines that we must adhere to, so that's included in the packet, but I'll let Dan and sort of Todd speak to it, and then if there's any other questions, we'll go from there.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Welcome.
Thank you. Good to see you all again. So, yeah, I think the initial question was why we chose 10 years. I think because this is a fire utility vehicle, typically we set the ban at a 10-year useful life due to the nature of the durability and the functional use of the vehicle.
Good.
I'll just keep typing
Oh,
in case they can't hear us.
It's Karen.
we have somebody.
Is that Karen?
That's Karen.
Karen, we can hear
I'm
you.
here.
Hi, Karen.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Karen, we have already voted your approval. And your
All right,
presentation,
I was typing some things in the chat just to give you an idea of what we were doing.
your presentation was outstanding.
Thank
We
you. I worked all
apologize.
day on it.
We apologize for the technical difficulty. It's certainly not on your end, it's on ours. We apologize, but the board did vote to approve it.
Okay. Well, if you have any questions, you can let me know later then. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Karen.
Sorry.
The question I have, can we put the useful life at 20 years? Because
So Mass General Law, Chapter 44, 7, Section 1, the minimum amount that you have to have for equipment is 5 years. The statutory longest period is 30 years. However, for DOR purposes, the most they'll accept on equipment is 20 years. So it's up to the CEO and/or Select Board to vote in 5 to 20 years on equipment and what the useful life is. The reason why we're proposing 10 years is to coincide with the ban for accounting purposes. So we have a ban that's going to be 10 years. We need to have the equipment deemed as going to be at least useful for those 10 years to satisfy the ban. However, you could vote more and go up to the full 20, but not exceed the 20.
Okay.
And so just to clarify, from my understanding, the 10 years is just determining how we're going to borrow the money to pay for that. It doesn't determine how long we're actually going to use the vehicle.
So again, the useful life is determinative for an accounting standpoint.
Right, not for an
So
actual,
the actual useful life of the equipment, we hope in 20, 25, 30 years.
I love that.
For accounting purposes and what we're trying to accomplish as far as the requirements of bond counsel is to coincide with the 10-year ban that we're going to approve so that this can still be within the budget parameters that we're going to have coming forward for the debt.
The reason I just state that is because it does say useful life, and it isn't going to hurt to put a 20-year next to the, because they just need a minimum of 10, but to put a 20 doesn't really affect them. But the term useful life just means after its useful life, it says it's done. So it makes more sense, I feel, to put a 20-year term on it, but
So it means it's done from an accounting purpose, meaning we can't borrow against it, or it means it's done from a useful purpose, meaning we can't use it?
well,
The latter. You can use it for how long that apparatus stays. I think in terms of your question, it's the former. It's the accounting purposes of how long you're looking to ban or
What
ban
you're
it out.
voting for here is the longevity of the equipment for the debt purposes going
Only.
forward.
Yes.
You have to separate the issues. This is,
You could have, again, this piece of
take
equipment
the
for 10
truck out
years.
of the picture. Forget the truck. The truck could last 20, 30, 40 years, we don't know. This is for accounting purposes and how long we want to finance the debt. It's really that simple.
Yep.
And I'm always in favor of the shorter periods rather than longer periods. I'd like to see it at 5 years, but I wouldn't argue over 10, but I would not want to see it longer than that. I don't think it serves the town's best interest. This is not a huge debt. This is a small amount of money relative to how we finance things, and I think the sooner we can get it off the books, the better.
But what I was saying, though, if we did say 20, it doesn't mean we're financing it for 20 years. We could still finance it for the 10. It's just saying the useful life is 20 years, that's all.
They're different issues. It's a terminology that has to be sort of part of the financing process, but the useful life of the vehicle will be however long it lasts. It doesn't matter. And this is strictly an accounting issue. Nothing more, nothing less. How long do we want to finance it? That's all. And if you take the word useful out of there, just take it out and get rid of it because you really don't need it. How long do we want to finance it? And as Todd's saying, you can do a minimum of 5 or up to a maximum of 20. And
Well, for ban purposes, maximum of 10.
right. And I'm just in favor of shorter periods because, again, it's a small amount relative to how we finance things, and the sooner we get this stuff off the books, the better.
If
I
this
think that's
was,
the key part, Todd. I think you emphasized the ban purposes, that we are maxed out at 10 years. I think that's a key part to address for us.
so if this was more expensive piece of equipment,
Yeah.
you could have the bond terminology of useful
Right.
life of 20 years, then you could actually go out to bond on it,
Yeah.
not have a ban, because you can't have a ban longer than 10 years.
So that's the key element we really want to be clear about, is a ban it's the correct acronym is a bond anticipation note. We generally do ban for short-term debt.
Correct.
It's not the typical sort of bond process like we would do for the fire station, et cetera. So a ban, you are limited to short-term duration. So if we were bonding it, you could do the 20-plus years or whatever you would determine there. But with a ban, you are kind of maxed out at 10, even though we're being very clear. We expect that the life expectancy of this vehicle is way longer than 10 years. But in terms of mass general law and in terms of ban, how we operate a ban, we are maxed at 10 years, and that's why we are going with the 10-year duration.
And historically,
As a recommendation.
most of our bans have been for equipment of shorter duration, 5 years
Yeah.
typically. Thanks to 2017, with the general law changes, they've extended the bans from 5 years to 10 years, again, following stipulations such as the useful life requirement.
Question, why I'm not opposed to your recommendation, I'm just curious why you're not supporting 5 years.
Because it fits within the budget the debt amount that we have currently within the operating budget. If we do it 5 years, it's going to require us to reduce.
Well, I know it's more money, obviously. I mean, that's a no-brainer, but it's not a lot.
It's going to impact your budget.
I went through the numbers. It's not a lot. But if you want 10, I'm okay.
I think for us, just to go off of that, it may not be a lot in terms of how we say a lot, but, I think as we talk about tonight, our financial forecast and in the budgeting process, I think we want to give ourselves as much flexibility as possible moving forward. Whether it's 5, whether it's 10, I think our team wants to be as flexible as possible.
And we can always make payments.
And you can rebond. I know. It's a
Yep.
ban. So you can change this in due time, and then, at some point, I kind of hope we will.
This was to smooth the transition
Yeah.
from the debt was coming
I
out
understand.
within the budget.
I just am as my finance background, debt is a death knell in all businesses. And so the shorter term we can have on debt and get it off the books, to me, assuming that we can afford it and it's functional within our budget, I'm in favor of that, just as a general principle. But you're right, we can reconsider this at some point in the future.
Yep.
And just a clarifying question, that not for right this minute, but is it possible to set up some kind of a vehicle replacement fund that we're kind of putting a little bit into all the time? So next time we need a $1.5 million, or next time it'll probably be $2.5 million vehicle, that we're in a better position to pay for that?
Yes, I mean, that's one of the things that, we did at town meeting. We established another stabilization fund that we could utilize for capital, and when we did do that, we talked about, hey, when we have the opportunity to put money there, we're going to take advantage of that, because it is helpful, when we go to bond ratings, to see those additional funds. So we do have the mechanism to do that, assuming that the funds are available for us to do that. But we do have a stabilization fund just for that now.
Thank you.
And I believe the original ladder truck that we have was, 1995, 1996, somewhere in that range? It was in the 90s.
I'm not going to guess because I don't know exactly. I think you're correct,
I believe it's
Jim,
in the 90s.
but I don't know that for a fact.
These are not quick turnover vehicles.
Thomas.
We need Thomas. Thomas would know.
Yeah, Thomas would know. Yes, he probably had the
These
exact day we
apparatus
bought it, would be my best guess.
Stay for a long time. And I think we're being very clear about this. We're not looking to replace that equipment in 10 years.
So you're recommending
Most
10?
definitely not.
Okay. Any further questions?
No.
Sir?
Yep.
You sure?
Yep.
Okay. Do we have a motion to approve?
I move that we vote that the maximum useful life of the fire ladder truck to be financed with the proceeds of the $750,000 authorized by the vote of the town meeting passed November 12, 2024, Article 3, is hereby determined pursuant to General Law, Chapter 44, subsection 7-1, to be 10 years.
Second.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The next item on the board's agenda is consideration of a sewer abatement appeal. I do want to clarify for the board, there are two.
No, wait, we're skipping the.
Excuse me, I missed number 4. Thank you, Anita.
You're
You
welcome.
didn't have the packet. And you
Accessory dwelling units to the planning board.
So this is, as the board is aware, this is sort of our technical process that we typically do for planning articles that are on the warrant. Rich McCarthy is going to appear before the board at our following meeting to talk about the proposed zoning changes. So right now, before the board is a technicality, just to refer it back so the planning board can have their hearing, which will be on Monday, January 27th, and then we will discuss the ADU article at the following board meeting.
Yeah, this is just a process vote.
Yeah.
It's something we just do. It's really no debate. Is everyone comfortable just?
Yes.
Okay.
Do we have to
motion?
read, well, it says the motion is in the packet. Is that this whole notice is hereby given? Do we have to read that?
No.
I think you
just-
can read it just the way it's worded here on the
Yeah.
agenda.
Yes.
All
I
right,
vote to approve referring zoning amendments for accessory units back to the planning board.
like that.
I will make the motion. I move to refer the zoning amendments for accessory dwelling units back to the planning board for their consideration.
Second the motion.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Yeah. It's a process. So now we're current.
And let's thank the planning board for their work.
Yeah. I jumped the gun a little bit, but now getting back to the abatement appeal, I just want to clarify for the board, there's actually two abatement requests that we're dealing with. The council that you do have the information in the packet from represents not only the Meeting House Village Condominium Trust, they also represent the Norfolk Town Center condominium as well. They sent separate abatement requests, and they didn't send them to me, so I wasn't aware of the other requests. But they largely have this. It's literally the same letter and sort of information. It's just for the two condominium groups. As a board, just to give a little context. As the board is aware, we set a sewer rate that has been an issue of contention for some time. Their abatement request is essentially trying to have the board to reconsider how we got here and how we've set the sewer rate. It isn't generally. It is a request for relief on their payment, but it's largely they want to see the payment revert to how it was in the original agreement. So we did, when the abatement request went to the DPW director, it was not approved. And as part of this water and sewer abatement policy that the board now has implemented, the next process is it goes to the board for consideration if the board wants to consider the abatement request. And that's where we are at the moment.
Okay. Well, did you all have a chance to read the lengthy article, communications we've received?
And this is the same thing that the board received in October as well.
I'm sorry?
This is sort of the same information that the board received in October too. It's nothing different.
It is nothing different. So what is the pleasure of the board?
So it was my opinion when I read it, I was like having a little deja vu because it is nothing different, and we've already discussed this, and we also have a charge from town meeting, and so I'm not inclined to approve unless the members, my fellow members of the board, have a compelling argument. I'm not inclined to approve it.
I was reading it, and it seems like we don't actually have the right to approve it because it was under the circumstances to approve the abatement. Those circumstances don't apply.
Well, it's first, we are still subsidizing the rate. We need to make that clear.
Significantly.
We are subsidizing, if I recall, at 40%. So we are not passing on all of the costs, which under the agreement, we could pass on all the costs. The town is continuing to subsidize that. I understand their argument. They believe that the old agreement, when Borelli controlled the process and established this whole agreement back in, gosh, when was it? 90s or a long time ago.
2000s, yeah.
And then that whole agreement became null and void when we made a change. And we established this process, and we've been subsidizing it now for 2, if not 3 years.
2 years.
And we can't continue to do that. And we've tried compassionately to understand that issue, and hopefully some developments will ease that burden at some point. And we've taken steps through the legislature to try and ease that by allowing us to put liens on properties that, are under the old agreement, if you will. Maybe I'm kind of circumventing the true letter of the conversation, but in general, I think that's where we are. I mean, it is what it is. We cannot we can't subsidize it more than we have. And so it is the same argument over and over. I understand it. I do understand it, and I sympathize with it, but the town made a vote as to how this was going to work, and I think we have an obligation to follow the town's mandate. And we're doing it with leniency. I can't agree with making any change at this point.
I do have a question, though. If you said the agreement between the tenants or the people in Borelli don't really apply to us, how can we put a lien on the property if...
The old agreement with Borelli, when it was run by Meeting House Road, and I'm probably one of the antiques that remember this, there were usages proportioned to various pieces of property throughout the area that is hooked up to that system.
Right.
The 5-acre piece, the 7-acre piece, Walgreens, the various little stores that are there are all part of that process. Borelli was less than consistent in living up to that obligation. And when we took over the system, and we can argue whether that was a good or bad decision, but we did, we took it. And we've managed it now for, I'm not sure how long. Do you remember how long? I'm going to say 7, 8 years, if not longer.
Yeah.
Somewhere in that range.
7 or 8 years.
Yeah. And then we passed the Sewer Act through the legislature and town meeting's approval. It's a new deal. It's a different arrangement. And it's no different than the Water Enterprise Fund, basically. It's just like the water system. I mean, the users pay for what's there. That's the way the system is designed. And we've been subsidizing it now for 2, if not 3 years, because, quite honestly, if the whole burden fell on the Meeting House Road residents, it would be oppressive, in my opinion. And so that's why I've supported phasing this in over time. And there are hopes that some of the other properties will be developed, and we took some legislative action to try and be able to provide, how should I word it, potential collection from people that own some of that land or potentially own that land. Am I doing all right on this, Justin?
You are. I'll probably expand on what you're going to say,
Please
because I
feel
think
free.
that's what Kevin's saying. So the way that the wastewater district is in place now, we don't have the capacity to, it's just like Jim had mentioned, it's like the water system. It's based on usage. Before it was based on allocation.
Right.
And so when you do based on usage, now the town has the capability to put liens on property if there's no payment, et cetera. We don't have that capability for people who are not utilizing.
Okay.
So one of the things that, in trying to look at everything and trying to be creative, one of the things that we went back to town meeting for recently was to then seek another special approval to see if we can get a special act to sort of implement the old agreement and go after people based on the usage.
So
now, if that's possible, who knows? But that's something that the town is exploring, and we will see how that goes in the legislature.
So did the old agreement carry over to the town?
No,
No, it does not.
when we implemented the wastewater district, and this is, the council has come here several times, is they say that old agreement is null and void.
So how can we go after anybody and put liens on if we have no agreement with them?
As I was saying, Kevin, I think we're trying to be creative, and we're trying to get a special act to see it. Now, if this is something that's feasible, I don't know. But it's a special act that town meeting said, let's try and see if we can do that. I will stop it there. I will stop it there.
Under the current law, we do not have the right to do that.
Okay.
And that's
Correct.
why we've gone to the legislature to get a special act. And it is, when you say special, it is special. It is unique. In fact, I think it's a one of a kind.
And that was a strategic decision, and these decisions were sort of made, several years back. I wasn't part of the decision, but actually that was part of the strategic decision in separating the special acts. As I spoke with Tom Harrington, our council, he said, well, listen, that was something that the town was interested in doing, but he said they've never seen something like that before, and they didn't think that would lend credence to this passing the special act.
Right.
So they approached it in 2 phases. One, implement a wastewater district, which they've seen many times. That's generally how it operates. It doesn't operate as based on the old agreement. And then the next phase of that, because understanding, hey, this is going to have an impact on the users that's completely different before, let's try now to go for the second component of the special act. That is very unique. There's no community that I know who has something like that. Like I said, we will try.
Well, that's just because the builder is charging them for usage when they don't have the usage, yeah. Future usage.
It's very unique.
But the distinction between what the folks that live there feel versus where we are is very distinct. The difference is very distinct. They're going back to the old agreement and claiming that it has some legal basis for enforcement, and our council and everyone associated on our side says that is absolutely not the case. That is a null and void agreement. We're under a new deal, and we've been subsidizing that deal.
Right.
Because it is, potentially somewhat punitive if we were to implement it face value first day it started. And so we've phased it in over time to try and ease that burden, but that is the way it is currently structured. So I don't know how there's any way we can agree with the abatement because it doesn't fall within the provisions of what the current agreement states.
Yes, but just to restate what you already said so nicely, we're not unsympathetic to the
No, of course
impact
not.
on the residents. And we've worked very creatively and aggressively to try to mitigate that impact for them. and it is subsidized, and it was subsidized they only paid 40, this year they're only paying 60, and I know it's more than what they're accustomed to, and so we're not unsympathetic to that, but we are restricted by,
Right.
We're restricted by town meeting vote. The town voted to implement this.
They
And it is a
absolutely did.
binding agreement, and the old agreement is no longer binding. And we are under that structure whether we like it or not. So either we charge the full amount, or we try to ease the burden and phase it in, which is within our privilege, but it is putting a portion of this onto the backs of the other taxpayers.
well, I think right now, that's not necessarily true, because if I'm right, we're subsidizing it with money from the water abatement fund, we're not subsidizing it with tax dollar money.
That's true.
The sewer.
But that is
Sewer
true.
abatement, sorry.
Yep, sewer abatement.
So it
Yeah.
isn't costing taxpayers money,
Correct.
but it is taking money from a fund that is intended to support that facility. And
It is town funds that are subsidizing it.
Yes.
Yeah. That's a much better way to say it. Thank you. Yeah. So I guess we have to vote yea or nay on the appeal.
Correct.
What is the board's privilege?
I think we need to deny the appeal.
Yeah, we have to
Mr.
vote no.
Roach.
I vote no.
Well, would you like to make a motion?
I'd like to make a motion, we deny the request for the abatement.
Second.
Can I make just a friendly amendment, just so for clarification, because it was in the agenda, just say for the Norfolk Town Center condominium and the Meeting House Village Condominium Trust. That's okay.
That's fine.
Acceptable?
Acceptable.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
As hard as that is, I do understand.
I do too.
The next
All right,
agenda
sir.
item, I'm just going to ask Blair Crane just to come up, and this is going to be very brief. I know the board generally this has been a landfill environmental engineering service contract for a long time. As you know, as part of our sort of review of procurement, we had council take a look at this language. There were some proposed changes, et cetera. So this has all been approved by town council. It's fine under procurement. I just want to have Blair just give a brief understanding of why we do this, because I think it's good for the community and for the board to hear that. But once again, our council did take a look at this and be okay with this.
Good evening.
Looks like you're out
This is
directing
great.
traffic tonight.
Yes, it's been a long few days here with snow. Just a brief kind of high-level overview. Obviously, we are well aware that the landfill in town, the old landfill, was capped in the 90s. It was one of the first in the state. Part of that is engineering process and monitoring of that is that we have to continue to monitor and test water wells around the area, as well as the integrity of the structure itself. That is an annual cost. There are over a dozen wells in that area that have to be monitored and tested. There are reports that have to be filed with DEP, and we have to remain in compliance with their regulations. So this company that we use to do this is the engineering firm that started right from the very beginning. So they have all of the history that has gone on with this project since the early 90s. So they've been a very valuable resource. We've had them through when we've had issues with leachate collection, and a few years ago when we had some problems with the piping system. So their knowledge has been incredible and very useful. And so this really just boils down to engineering services for compliance with that.
Okay. This is business as usual for us. Any questions on it?
No, it was, no offense, but it was kind of bedtime reading. Are we voting to authorize the town administrator to?
No, the board's going to sign this one.
Okay.
Yeah.
Any questions? Kevin?
No.
Okay. Do I have a motion?
I move that we approve the contract for services related to landfill environmental consulting engineering services.
Second?
Second.
Second. Any further? All in favor?
Aye. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. If the board is agreeable, Ingrid has arrived, and I know it's been a crazy week for her, and will be another crazy couple of weeks coming up. Do you mind if we're in agreement, we can move to the Freeman Kennedy project presentation or discussion, if that's agreeable?
That's fine with me.
So
Very agreeable.
we'll move it up. Welcome.
How was your tour?
Running, but good. Good. We just have a community forum going on tonight at HOD, so we just did the tour. So I apologize. I'm masking. I'm taking care of someone who's sick at home. So if you can't hear me, let me know, and I will try to speak louder. That sound okay? So thank you for inviting us tonight. I believe some of the building committee may join after. They are at the H Olive Day. But we've already come and presented to the select board the full project proposal for the Freeman Kennedy School. As you are aware, we have a pretty significant space shortage currently at the H Olive Day School, and the Freeman is fully occupied. We have been working since 2017 with all the building happening in town. We've done multiple demographic studies. Most recently, hired a third contractor out of Virginia who did a new analysis with a fresh set of eyes. And we are still seeing the projections consistent with the other two studies. We're expecting at least another 200 students over the next 10 years. We are totally out of space in the district. And so we had a building committee. We did a full feasibility study originally of the Freeman Kennedy of an expansion project. That was after, back in 2017, we had already ruled out some other options as not viable. The town voted to appropriate funding for the full feasibility study. We completed that, and during that period of time, obviously the world changed, COVID happened. There was significant concerns about the potential cost of the project, and we were asked to do an expanded study to reevaluate whether modular options might be more cost effective, and to see if there were any other things that we could consider that might be a better solution for the town. So we did go through that process. At town meeting, we updated the town on the results of the modular study. Modular options that we looked at two different two-story modular options as well as a one-story, to see if there was any cost savings in laying the square footage out differently. Those solutions were considerably higher priced than we expected, about $30 million. We had each different option priced at two different levels. Level A, which is more of a low-end finish, vinyl windows, laminate flooring, pillar, no real true foundation, has a life expectancy of 10 to 15 years. And then we also looked at pricing those same options at a higher level finish, aluminum frame windows, ceramic tile, an actual foundation, different HVAC systems. And that had a life expectancy of 20 to 25 years. The building committee reviewed those, determined that that wasn't a wise investment for the town because you'd be spending maybe $4 or $5 million less, but the building life expectancy was significantly lower than a brick and mortar, which would leave the town seeking another solution at higher cost in 15 years. So the building committee voted unanimously. We did look at leased space in other towns. We looked at the viability of that. We did talk about the viability of a third site for an early childhood center. None of those yielded significant cost savings. I can walk through them further if you have questions about those two. The biggest challenge, if we were to look at an early childhood center off-site, is that only solves the building crisis and space crisis at H Olive Day. It would provide an option for additional preschool and free up classrooms there, but it doesn't address that the Freeman Kennedy is at capacity and we are expecting another 150 students or so there. So then you would have to do two solutions, an early childhood plus some sort of addition or modification to Freeman Kennedy. Also, the annual operating costs of a third site are significant. If we were to have an early childhood center somewhere else, we would have to hire a full-time nurse. We would need a building administrator. We would need additional special education staff because our speech therapists, our occupational therapists, they have full schedules. We can't build in travel time to travel to a third site to deliver services without increasing staffing. So additional transportation costs, clerical costs to have somebody at the front entrance. So there were a lot of additional operating costs in addition to the building construction that would really challenge the operating budget for the town and for the district. So the building committee voted unanimously to move forward with a brick and mortar recommendation. We've held, I think, 5 community forums. We presented to the advisory, the town meeting, to the select board a couple of times. I know some new questions have come up as the vote date gets closer. People have had additional questions, so happy to answer any questions that you might have.
What year was this, did the school open?
Freeman Kennedy opened when I started 2012.
And you were saying in 2017 you started to look So that was only 5 years after school opened.
It was. I wasn't here when the original Freeman Kennedy project happened, but I do know that the town built the Freeman Kennedy with MSBA funds. MSBA participated that in a cost share. It was about 50%, so they paid for half the cost of the building. And the Mass School Building Authority does not permit towns to build for future growth or expansion. They won't participate in the cost share for any rooms that aren't built to your current need. So the town, I'm assuming at that time, voted not to add additional classrooms at their full expense. Probably not a bad decision, because you would have had classrooms that were unoccupied that you would have been maintaining for the last 15 years. But that was the decision made.
Well,
at the
yeah, but in
time.
17, you started to look for the future because your classrooms were getting full in 17, so it would have been 5 years out. My issue is in 5 years out from now, are we going to be looking at another expansion?
Well, I think that's a great question. And again, I wasn't here when the original study and the building was built. I came when I cut the ribbon and walked in the door, so it was done. But this building committee really did their due diligence on that. We looked at, we commissioned 3 different demographic studies. We have projected data that's reliable and consistent across multiple studies that says that this project will provide enough educational space through the end of the study, which is 2035, probably beyond that, but you can't do demographic projections more than 10 years out because the economy changes, other things change, and they're not reliable. But this would provide opportunities to add an additional 1 to 2 preschool classrooms and opportunities at the Freeman the buildings would not be fully occupied till about 2031, and it does provide flexible options for how you could create additional space if you needed them.
So basically, in 6 years, the school will be fully occupied, though?
We expect that the classrooms will be occupied by 2032, but when you look at the projections between 2032 and 2035, there's not dramatic growth, so this creates enough space for the projected populations through 2035. Then you, again, would have some flexible options for moving classrooms or redesigning things within the existing footprint to adjust growth going forward. H. Olive Day is 32 years old. So that building should be, the average life expectancy of a school is 50 years. So you get another good 20 years of life on the H. Olive Day as well. But after that point, you'll have to look at what needs to be done for that facility. So this should carry you through until you need to look at those buildings again.
Well, I'm probably the only one around here when the H. Olive Day, because I was actually on that school committee and was very much a proponent.
Why am I not surprised?
I'm the old
You've been on a lot of committees.
And I was a big proponent for building that.
Yeah.
And I won't go labor everyone through the history of how we got to this mess, but it is an interesting story. When we built that H. Olive Day School, we knew that we were building it undersized for what we needed. Mm-hmm. And we tried to convince the town that we needed an additional 8 classrooms. The town did not agree with that. And they fought it 3 different times. It failed in town meeting until we finally got it passed at a smaller level than what we actually knew we needed. And as history will tell you, we ended up adding those classrooms at a later date. So I completely concur that you've got to understand that we're restricted by SBA in the building, the state
Absolutely.
reimbursement component as to what you can and you cannot do. And I agree with that. The part that I struggle with is the school committee's policy on class size.
Happy to talk about
I
that.
freely admit that is a part that I struggle with. The school committee has a policy, which is a school committee policy, it's not a state policy,
Yep.
that is substantially below the recommendations for the state. And they are. And they impact the number of students you have in classes. If you look back into the early 2000s in those areas, it was very common to see 23, 24 students in our classes. Those were the numbers. They're a matter of town record. And now we're dealing in 18, 19, 20, and 21 per class. Those are your current numbers. Why is the school committee not willing to move off of that policy?
So I can certainly explain that. So the school committee policy currently is for a maximum class size of 21 in grades K to 2. And it is 25 in the upper grades. We have a classroom right now of 25 in the upper grades. We have 23. We have higher numbers in the upper grades. It's 21 in the lower grades. The school committee, if we lifted the class size and went to all classes of 25 and 22, that would accommodate less than half of the expected new growth. Just for perspective, Boston City Schools, their maximum class size pre-K to 2 is 22. We will have classes at 22 next year at the H. Olive Day. Based on current enrollment, we are projecting needing 2 more classes, which we do not have. If we transition art to a cart, then the committee's going to have to lift the class size for 1 grade level because we can't accommodate, we don't have another classroom other than the art to repurpose. So we will have classes of 22 at the early childhood level, which is the maximum class size in Cambridge, the maximum class size in Boston. We will not have competitive class sizes. At the upper grades, they could lift again to 25. We don't have the numbers we used to have. Our average class size is 20, but it is pulled down by lower classrooms in the lower grades. We already have classes of 23, 24, and I have a class of 25 currently at the upper grades. So lifting that to 25 does not, it accommodates less than what we expect, and less than half of the growth. So you still have a building need. Also, we, as far as class size, there is an impact on teaching and learning and instruction, especially at the lower grades, where the way we deliver reading and the way we deliver math is different than it used to be. We deliver in small groups. Students are evaluated to determine what level they're reading at or what their needs are in math, and the teacher meets with small groups of students. When you have 21 students, you can meet with 3 or 4 groups a day. When you have 25, you don't meet with students daily. We can have paraprofessionals. We've been asked why we wouldn't add more paraprofessionals. Right now, we have 3 open positions that we've been trying to fill for paraprofessionals since September. We do that every year, and so do our neighboring community. I'm sure KP has open parapositions right now. It's a really hard job to fill, and they're licensed differently. They don't have an educational background or certification. So paraprofessional staff cannot design instruction. They cannot evaluate or assess students. They deliver instruction planned and designed by the teacher. It is not the same. It is not the same as getting your core content from a certified licensed educator. We've seen declining test scores. We've seen declining enrollment. So the idea of increasing class size, one, places a huge burden on the classroom teacher, who is now evaluating, assessing, and designing instruction for a lot more students. I think you've seen a lot of teachers' contracts and maximum class size. Again, we're pretty close. Only 25% of students in the state of Massachusetts are educated at the elementary level in classrooms over 21.1. That's right from DESE. So I think it's a decision the town would have to make, but that is not why people move to Norfolk. It's not why people come to our schools. And it would have a detrimental effect on instruction.
Okay. I think you've given a very good answer to that. It's a question that's asked frequently.
Absolutely.
And I'm glad you gave that answer. Thank you.
You're very welcome.
Further questions, anyone?
Just as for everybody, I used to work for the Norfolk Public Schools, so in 2018 when this started, I knew the urgency of it then at that time, and so I went through the beginning of that, and then I'm no longer there, obviously, but I guess I think it's important for people to hear. So if this does not pass, so let's say the community doesn't come forward with the money necessary for this to pass. If this does not pass, what will be the impact for our students?
Okay, that's a good question. So, again, as I said, we are already out of space. So what the impact in the immediate future would be is we will lose the art program or the art classroom at the H. Olive Day, and so that will transition to a cart. I just gave the tour of the H. Olive Day this evening. So if you go to the back of the H. Olive Day stage, which is literally behind the curtain, we currently have the music room, all of the music equipment, all of our computer technology equipment, and the teacher's prep room. Art will go there too. So you'd have 4 people with all their materials traveling from place to place to try to deliver instruction. Class sizes will go up across the board. We won't be able to bridge that for very long. We will have to look at potentially modular solutions. When we looked at temporary modulars, they're high cost with not a lot of return because the problem's not projected to go away. I think if we were looking at, we expect in the Norfolk schools to see a temporary spike in 27. We're going to see 100 kids and then it's going to come back down. I would be proposing, and I would assume the building committee would be bringing forward a different recommendation. In those cases, a lease space might make sense, but temporary modulars might be worth the investment. But what happens is that just gives you a Band-Aid, and then we're looking at a permanent solution. And the cost of this project, when we had it cost estimated by the same professional estimators just a few years ago, was significantly less, almost half. of what it is now. So construction goes up by 5 to 12% every year. We'd be putting in implementing costly temporary solutions and then coming back with probably a higher cost solution. I know a lot of people have asked about leasing space, so just to hit some of the highlights of that, we did look at that. We're part of a collaborative, a special education collaborative, KP's as well. We're part of the BICO collaborative. That's a collaborative of 18 local communities. BICO provides all of their specialized services within public schools, so they lease space from other public schools. We were in a space shortfall there, and so BICO had to lease space. They leased 60,000 square feet from the Walpole Public Schools. In doing that, because there's very few facilities, we did a site search, there's very few facilities that have that volume of space. We're looking, again, 37,000 square feet. The school in Walpole is dated. It was an initial investment of about $650,000 just to bring things up to code. And then if you look over the 10-year lease, they prorated, so the first couple of years are lower because of the upfront costs, and then it increases. But the average lease is $850,000 a year for that space. We would need $40,000, so you'd need about $650 ballpark. Additionally, you'd need another $600,000 to $700,000 in staffing, because you then need, again, the nurse, you need a full food service team, you would need art, music, physical education, special education. So the annual staffing costs bring that up to $1.5 million just on average. So you look at a $15 million investment over 10 years to have students attending school in another town in a lower quality facility and then still have a problem. You know, you come out of that lease, if they cancel it anywhere along the way, or you come out of that and you still have a space shortage, and then you're doing a renovation or an expansion project at significantly higher cost. So we did evaluate lots of different options. I think the team was really committed to trying to find the lowest cost solution that would have the longest, I know, Kevin, when you toured, longest return for the town, because you shared the concern about needing a new space repeatedly.
Right. Now, you were just saying you need additional staffing at another school.
If you did a third site.
Yes, but now, with this addition, you wouldn't need any additional staffing right now?
No, and that was one of the big considerations of building at the Freeman Kennedy campus. Again, we would be bringing the early childhood wing over, so the preschool wing, and then additional classrooms upstairs, but you already have a nurse on that site. You have a full-time nurse. We would be relocating the special education offices, which we've already moved from H. Olive Day to Freeman now, but they would be at the front entrance. So the secretaries for the special education office would monitor the door. The special education director will serve as the building administrator for the preschool wing. Speech and OT provide service already at Freeman, so we can stretch without having to add travel time into those schedules. We will need, and this is it's actually a good question that you're bringing up, we anticipate, based on just the size of the building expansion, there will need to be additional staffing. We would need an additional custodian, and we'd probably have to increase the clerical staffing from 0.6 to full-time. That's 1.4 positions, about $90,000. The teaching additions, by the time it would open in 2027, we project we'd need 3 more teachers based on current forecasts for enrollment. Those teachers will be added regardless of the building. If we don't add a building and we're teaching in the library or in a mobile classroom, we need teachers. So those 3 positions are about $220,000, again, assuming a COLA over the next couple of years. But just for the building, it's about $90,000 in staffing and about $160,000 in estimated operating costs for that wing. One of the advantages, as I was talking about before, is having it on site, we're able to share staff better. Also, we haven't gone through the design phase, so we are asking for funding for the design portion of the project. There are likely opportunities to create some energy savings. We haven't explored that yet because we're not there. So could we have solar panels on the roof that might save in the maintenance and operating costs?
Is there solar on the roof now?
Yes, that's
okay.
So we might have an opportunity there. Also, as I said, the building won't be fully occupied when it first opens. We have in the past, when we had space, we've leased classrooms to the BICO Collaborative, which I was talking about, we're members of. They lease classrooms in multiple, Rentham has a BICO classroom, Plainville. So there's opportunities to rent the additional open classrooms in the preliminary years of the addition that could also help offset some of those operating costs.
Other questions? Well, thank you for being here.
You're very welcome.
Our role is to create as much transparency on this opportunity as we possibly can.
Absolutely.
We have supported putting it on the warrant. We have supported going it through town meeting, because this is a decision that should be made by 7,000 voters, not 3 people sitting here or 200 people sitting in town meeting. So,
And I appreciate the opportunity because I do feel that it is a significant ask, and the more information people have, we want everybody to have all the information.
That is our
to make.
only goal,
Yep.
we have not voiced a for or against. It's not our position to do so. But it is our position to get as much transparency on the project and as much impact to the voters as we possibly can.
Absolutely.
And that's why we were hoping you could come this evening to share that, because you can articulate it far better than we can.
I appreciate it.
And we appreciate your being here and sharing that. Thank you.
And all of the information is on our website. There is a building project, so if you go to Norfolk Public Schools and you, up at the top, there's a button for the FK expansion. All of the studies, the feasibility reports, the demographic studies, meetings are there. And we did add the breakdown of costs that you had asked for so people could see what's included, because there were questions about, is the playground, is the equipment, all of the furniture, all of the playground, everything is included in that number.
We have shared those slides, and I want to thank you for that transparency, because, and I also want to echo, at least, I'm speaking for me, because we have not discussed it as a board, but I fully support those capital items. If this project is approved and it does go forward, which will be at the discretion of the voters, there are capital needs associated with this, and the only way to really fund them is to wrap it into the total cost. And we are supportive of that, because there's no other way to pay for it.
Right.
And so that does increase the cost. I think goes from $37 to about $44 million, but there's no other alternative. And I want to express at least my support for doing that, should this go forward, because there's no other way to pay for it. But they need to know that those costs are there.
Yeah,
And that they are potentially going to be wrapped into the cost. And so it is all about just full disclosure.
Absolutely. And I think the question with the capital items, just so if people aren't aware, there are 3 capital items that are end-of-life expectancy at Freeman. There's rooftop chillers, there's a fire alarm system that is a proprietary system that is no longer supported, and there's one other mechanical unit. We were asked whether it would be more cost-effective to replace those things if you were doing a project and you had a team on site mobilized in a crane. But I do want the public to know, if the building project doesn't go forward, those capital items are still needed.
They're still there. Yeah,
That
they're on the
will
list.
need to be
No
addressed.
question.
They are end of life, just like the police station, fire station. Everybody has operating systems that age out.
Right.
So I don't want people to think if we don't do that, those
No,
things
and
are
that's why I'm
paused.
saying that. That slide is going to be up on our webpage, identifying those 3 specific projects.
And it's on our project site.
And they're projects that need to get done.
Yep.
And if the school does go forward, it'll get wrapped in, at least with our support, it will get, my support. I think we're collective on that, because it's the only way to fund it.
And it will be cost effective.
There's no alternative. But they are on the list. They have to get done at some point in the future. It's opportunistic if it passes. If it doesn't, then whether it's 3 years or 5 years, they are on the list. And they're real. So we are supportive of that.
Thank you.
But it's important that the voters understand the full scope of what they're voting for.
Absolutely.
That's our job. And yours as well. We share the same goal.
Absolutely. And if anyone has questions, they're always welcome to reach out. Happy to answer anything that I can.
All right, thank you. I know you've got
Thank you very
a busy evening.
Yes, it's a traveling roadshow, but thank you.
Just one thing as we move beyond that, on our website too, we have on our front page a link to that site, as well as some of those documents that were mentioned. We'll include the new documentation regarding those capital projects. And I also want to thank Todd and Matt and Dr. Alardi in terms of the question in regards of the operating budget impacts. They've worked with that, so we have that information as well. So I want to thank all of them.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
And for those that don't know, I believe voting has started.
Yes, don't mention,
Early
yes.
voting things.
Early voting has started. So, and it comes to its conclusion on February 1st. So it's important that everybody votes for this, one way or the other, whatever your views. So let's go back to the Community Choice Aggregation Plan.
Yes, so we have Denise as well as Mark from our consulting group. I know they're familiar faces to the board now. As the board knows, we did execute a contract to implement a community aggregation program. Some information may have already hit some of the mailboxes, but we expect that it's going to be, people might receive it this week or next, information about that program. The executed rate was just a little bit higher than the indicative pricing, but it was still lower than the Eversource basic service rate. So we did execute that contract. One of the main things, and so I want Denise and Mark sort of to speak about where we are, but one of the main things that we want to do tonight is we want to select some informational meeting dates. One thing that we already are going to do, we're going to go to the senior center, and we're working with Karen Edwards to schedule that. But we're also looking for potentially 2 other dates that the board might be interested in having some informational sessions with the community. So I have some proposed dates from Mark and Denise for you to consider, but we want to hear from the board. That's where we're at right now. So does Denise or Mark want to hop on?
Yeah.
Because I don't know what's going on with that, but they are there.
So,
Look at that. The magic of TV. Good evening.
Can't hear you.
Can't hear her.
Well,
Okay.
good morning.
They have them try again.
Denise, can you just speak, see if we've got this resolved?
Sure, can you?
We can hear you now. Wonderful.
Perfect. Fantastic.
Thank you,
Good
Andrew.
evening, how are you? So as Justin said, just to recap, right, the mailing went out on Friday, and we were there previously, we said there would be 2 mailings, right? So everyone who is currently on Eversource Basic Service in the town will receive what's called an opt-out notification. And that's just letting them know that they're going to be automatically switched to the town's standard product offering if they don't opt out. There's a 30-day opt-out window, and it goes till February 20th. So there's a postage paid envelope in the card with an opt-out card that you can just sign and put back in the envelope that you receive and mail that in if you're not interested in participating. But as Justin said, there are some savings against Eversource Basic Service. If you don't want to do the mailer, there's a phone number. If you don't want to do the mail back, there's a phone number in the letter. There's also to the website. You can opt out on the website as long as you have your bill handy. So very easy to opt out, multiple methods. The second mailing that went out is a 6x11 postcard that went out to folks who have already made a choice. So these are folks who have individual contracts with a supplier already. So a Constellation or a Direct Energy or maybe an Inspire. Just notifying folks about the town's program, laying out what the products are and the rates and the term, and letting them know how to opt in should they want to join the town's program. The only note, and this is stated on the postcard, is you want to check your current exit, make sure you don't have an early termination fee with your current supplier, right? We certainly don't want anyone to get hit with a $125 or $150 early termination fee if they leave their current supplier to join the town's program. So you want to be sure you don't have a fee to leave, and then you can just opt into the town's program if that's something you want to do. So those mailers did go out, and to Justin's point, we just want to schedule a couple of information sessions so we can speak to folks in person. They can bring their bill, they can ask questions, and just make sure we get the word out and everyone's aware of what's happening in the timeline.
If I may, I'm going to ask you, this is a redundant question, but I think it's a question I've been asked frequently. Just to restate it, if you would. If we have a citizen that is currently enrolled in, let's say, Constellation, and has a specific rate, and it has a period of time still to go, and you're going, do they have to opt out of the program, or do they just stay where they are until such time as it expires and opt in?
Correct. They will not be automatically enrolled, so they don't have to worry about that. They won't be removed from their current contract. They can wait out their current contract and opt in at a later date.
Okay, so the point being is that if you do have an outside provider other than Eversource, you will not be automatically moved into the town plan. Now, that's the question that's been asked to me many times, but I just want you to answer it. I've answered it, but I think it comes more officially from you.
Correct.
If you opt in at a later date, will there be a fee because you've missed the 30-day window?
Nope, so this program is great. The town has set it up so there are no fees either way, opting in or opting out at any time. You can move back and forth. The only fee there may be is if you're with a third-party supplier and you leave them early. But you can move back and forth between the town program and third-party supply, or the town program and Eversource Basic Service. We can only move you on a meter read, but there are no fees or penalty either way, no matter when you do it. The 30-day window is just to establish the folks who are going to be enrolled at launch.
Thank you.
I think that's a key element of the program that we want to emphasize is obviously, Denise, if you could just say the date that we expect to have this program roll out. But Eversource Basic Service Rate is done twice a year. And so as Denise had mentioned that there's a 30-day period, but, for the informed resident or payer, if ever the Eversource Basic Service Rate is lower than our community aggregation rate, you can opt out and take advantage of that, and there is no fee. So I think that's a great element of this program. So I think we're going to emphasize that obviously tonight and in future meetings, but that is a crucial part of this this program that we're very pleased to offer to residents.
And we have chosen an extended period of time to get us through several winters where these rates tend to spike, and that's been intentional. So
it's a 30-month duration.
Right. It's an option for people that potentially, hopefully, will provide savings. That's the only reason we're doing this, that hopefully it'll save folks some money. But you need to look at your own rate, exactly who you're, like I personally am with Constellation. And so, you just look at the rates, see what your exposure may be, if there's a termination fee, or just wait it out until, whether it's 12 months, 18 months, whatever contract you have. It's just an option that we feel is advantage to the town. So, and for a lot of people, it will save you money. Yeah, we hope. That's its intent. So.
Denise, we're still expecting to be able to implement this in the March timeframe, correct?
Correct. You will be, if you get the mailer saying you're being automatically enrolled, or if you opt in, otherwise, it's going to be your March meter read. So it isn't March 1st. It's going to be, you're going to start accruing at the town's rate on your March meter read, which is on your bill. Varies sometimes within towns, but you'll see on your March bill that you're being switched. There'll be an on-bill message saying you're being switched to the town's program. And then because we use our electricity and we're then billed for it, on the next month, you'll see that Direct Energy is listed as the town's supplier, and you should see the aggregation rate on your bill that following month when you're being billed for the March to April usage.
So a lot of folks may not pay any attention to what your charges are on your, there are two components to your bill, and they may not actually pay attention to that. So the message here is look at your bill. Take a look at what you're paying, whether you're under Eversource or an alternative provider, so that you have an understanding of the cost differences, because they can be meaningful. They really can. So,
and look at your mail. Don't think it's junk mail.
It's easy to ignore those bills. Just pay them.
We have a lot of this information on our website. Denise and Mark have, and that group have given us a lot of examples. So if you need to see what an example bill may look like, it's on our front page of our website too. We have a specific page for community aggregation where it provides a lot of the information that's in the mailer and some additional information for residents and businesses who are sort of interested and need more information.
Okay, thank you.
So one thing that the action item we need from the board today is sort of figure out in terms of informational sessions. We don't know if you want to have one before a select board meeting, if you want to have one independently at the library. We kind of just want some direction from the board, what you think might work best in terms of informational session dates. We do have some dates potentially that Denise and Mark have presented to us, but want to understand if you want to have an informational session at a board meeting, and maybe one additional one at the library. Once again, we are doing the senior center, and we're working with Karen Edwards on that.
I think one should be in the afternoon and one should be in the evening, so we could accommodate both needs of families who are in either situation.
We've talked about that. One of the things that we had as proposal was obviously the 7 p.m. because that's generally what time select board meetings occur, but maybe 5:30 as well. I don't know if the board thinks it needs to be earlier, but
on the same day?
I'm fine with whatever the board wants to do. I think it's going to be hard to get people to attend meetings physically during the wintertime, especially in this tight constraint, time frame that we have. We should take advantage of both our board meeting. We can do a cable show, anything we can do to get information out to people. I've not seen historically large turnouts in public forums for these kinds of things. We can try, it's okay. I just don't think we're going to get a large turnout. I think we have to take care, use the public forum to communicate this as best we can. That's just my opinion. But I'm all for it. I mean, it's
Well, with the board's discretion, I think if you
what do you
allow
think?
me and Denise and Mark to work on dates, we'll schedule one
Sure.
to be on a select board meeting, and then try
let's
to
do a
do
cable
an
show.
additional one, and we can look at doing a cable show or whatever, but we'll try to do an additional one, and I'll work with them to schedule that.
Perfect.
And have that one at like 5:30 or something like that.
Perfect.
Okay?
perfect.
All right, Denise and Mark will follow up then, I guess.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for your time tonight.
Thanks for your patience tonight, by the way.
Not a problem.
Thank you.
Have a good night.
The next one, this is just a brief one. If you turn the page, I'm sure you all know that I'm deeply involved in hockey officiating, but it's not just hockey. There have been a number of incidents across the state of Massachusetts where there have been physical attacks on referees of different sports. There was a really unfortunate one in Foxborough in a hockey game recently involving two officials that were assaulted by some parents during the course of the game. There is a proposed bill before the legislature to deal with this particular issue. It's been going on for some time, and it's gotten worse. And I have witnessed it personally. Fortunately, I haven't been on the receiving end, but I have seen it, and I get the reports because I'm involved in this hockey, high school hockey. What I'm asking is your permission to send a letter to our legislators asking for them to support this bill, which will hopefully take action against folks that take physical action against referees. We had two officials at Foxborough literally assaulted by parents over a hockey game. I've seen it too many times, and it's just uncalled for. And it's not just hockey, it's in all sports. I remember witnessing it at King Philip soccer game, same thing. So with your permission, if you are in agreement, I would sign a letter asking the board's support to just support this legislation, House bill, which just basically is taking action against folks that engage in this type of behavior.
I have no problem signing and supporting the bill.
I have no problem as well. It just basically says be nice.
It's unfortunate. There's no reason for the behavior we see, and I don't know how to explain it. I've been doing this for so long. I guess I'm somewhat immune to it in terms of the violence I've seen with parents on youth sports. But it is getting worse, and somehow we need to take action against this. So I think I would need a motion to authorize me to make that request of our legislators.
I move to authorize Jim Lehan to contact our legislators in support of the bill on assault on sports officials.
And I appreciate that. Is there a second?
I second the motion.
Further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
That is brief. All right. Justin, we've done the Freeman Kennedy, so let's
Yes.
go to the financial update.
So now we're going to go into the financial show. We're going to have Todd Lindmark to run through the Q2 financial update for the board, and then after that, the forecast.
Small print.
No, but they made it big.
No, I gave you a big one.
Look at here.
Oh, I know. I've already
beautiful.
looked at it, yeah.
That's a thing of beauty. I enjoyed it.
I know. And it's a bigger print. This is for the folks with glasses, right?
That's for me.
Yeah.
Thank you for having me once again on our quarterly update here. So, as usual, we'll start with the revenues first and see where we are based on our expectations and what we had budgeted. A couple of items I want to point out
So we can share this.
is the excise tax on the local receipts. So for 12/31/24, we only have collected $232,290, but that's on all the excise taxes prior to 2025's excise taxes. Those bills go out in February, and on the next quarterly update, you'll have a better idea of where we are landing with the overall revenues from that. Meals tax is coming a little bit higher than I expected, $50,766 as of 12/31, which is good. A lot of the other items are coming a little bit higher than projected at 50% for the year so far. One that I would like to point out is licenses and permits, which is the building department. We budgeted $535,000 for the year, and as of 12/31, they're at $583,000. So they've hit their target, and we expect a little bit more, which hopefully will translate to some additional new growth for next year's budgeting purposes. The other item I'd like to point out is, again, as I've indicated before, we made some transitions from several of the bank accounts to some higher interest on our monies that are sitting in those accounts, which accounts for the $227,000 of investment income for year-to-date versus our budgeted of about $35,000. Again, the 227 is in total. At the end of the year, I will have to allocate some out to the various departments, whether it's CPC monies, the water department, wastewater, so forth, because those are allocated out at the end of the year. Our state aid is coming in as expected. No issues there. We've hit about the halfway mark. And then the other balance is the transfers, which free cash, we had support this year, the budget of $605,000. And then the component of ARPA, $195,000, and then $40,000 from ambulance funds to cover the ambulance expenses, which accounts for the $235,000 transfer. And those revenues in total for the year is $26,150, and that includes the assessment from the state. If you take the assessment out, it's $26,514,000 so far for this year. So we're on target and good pace. Any questions? Okay.
That's good. I think they're really excited to talk about the financial forecast, I guess.
We're not there yet.
Oh,
One more slide.
I think they wanted to, I thought we were going to go to the forecast instead of the next slide. Go ahead.
So this is a breakdown, again, the revenue component as well as the expenditures. Revenues we discussed, again, $25,612 in total. And that includes ambulance receipts, the full amount, debt exclusion at 50%. Expenditures is broken down by governmental function. General government includes most of town hall, land use, town clerk, et cetera, facilities. Right now, expenses as of 12/31 is about 42.5% at $1,599,000. Public safety, they're approaching about the 50% mark for the year at $3,003,000. Education, they're right on track at about 50% overall spend. And that includes the KP assessment, the Tri-County, as well as Norfolk Public Schools year-to-date as of 12/31. Public Works, doing a fine job at 48% year-to-date, as well as the Human Services and Culture and Recreation, which is the library and recreation departments. Benefits and insurance, again, 78% year-to-date, but that includes a large amount that we pay for the retirement component with Norfolk County. So we pay that up front in order to receive a sizable discount instead of paying two payments throughout the year. And that's included in that number. And a lot of our debt payments don't get done until the second half of this year, which is why the debt is only showing at 23% and 22% as of year-to-date. Those are actual numbers. So expected those to come out over the next quarter, a good portion. So right now for year-to-date overall, again, not all things being completed as of yet, not all transfers from free cash, but we're looking right about $657,000 as a small shortfall. But again, that's having large expenses, especially in the benefits and insurance, utilized year-to-date so far. Any questions on that?
Okay. Questions? Oh, okay.
Okay.
See, I guess we were anticipating the financial forecast. All right. So the next item on the board's agenda and in the board's packet is the financial forecast. Todd and I have a presentation that we're going to do so, but in the board's packet, you have the entirety of the forecast. As a reminder for the board, this process sort of was jump-started last year when we had the Collins Center do the financial forecast, along with working with Todd. And so what we committed to do is, moving forward, we believe it's an integral part of the budget process. This is going to be the first part of the budget process moving forward. A couple of things that I want to be clear about. A forecast is a large group of assumptions. These are things that we're assuming. We have different formulas. We'll get more information as we go through the budget process, as we get information from the governor's budget, and so forth. So a lot of assumptions. A forecast generally shows some tough numbers. You'll generally, especially for Norfolk moving forward, you'll largely see a deficit, right? So that was probably something that you saw jump out right away. So just in preparation, that's typical in a forecast. Todd, myself, and department heads, along with the leadership of the select board and advisory, we're forced to do a balanced budget, but that's what a financial forecast would present you with, okay? So I will run through the slides, and first slide, please. And so Todd and I will do this together. I'll just run through a little bit of the forecast. So as a summary of the forecast, employee benefits, collective bargaining, and educational costs, and these are all things that the boards will continue to put pressure on town and school budgets. One-time sources of funds continues to be a method that we utilize to balance our budget. One thing that's very different from our budget for the past 2 years has been the utilization of ARPA funds. We don't have any more ARPA funds to allocate towards the budget, so that one-time source of funds we will not be utilizing for the budget this year. So on the slides that we present, and we'll run through this we'll run through the high level of these slides. The town's preliminary deficit for this upcoming year is about $1.5 million, $1.5 million based on the assumptions within the forecast. And so major drivers of the deficit are fixed cost, their employee benefits, and that includes, town and school employees, as we'll mention as we get to that slide. And a good amount is the growing demands from, our educational partners with increased enrollment. And so we'll touch base on that when we get to the expenditures. So quick high levels of some assumptions within the forecast. So in the property tax, when we get to that slide, there's no projected overrides incorporating the forecast. New growth figures, I want to be very clear, do not include the potential Southwood site redevelopment. So we're very conservative with about 2.5% new growth. And we do our typical 2.5%, growth, et cetera, and we'll touch base on that when Todd gets there. Local receipts, we're showing modest growth again of 1.7% in fiscal year 26, and about our estimates for the assumptions that we utilize is about 2 to 3.5% in the out years as well. State aid, we're projecting incremental funding increase this year, about 1.7%. As we go to the MMA conference, we might hear a different story from the governor and lieutenant governor on their projected budget. But at the consensus revenue and at our MMA finance committee meetings, all the estimates that we've received from the state is in terms of their financial benchmarks for this year, they've been under. And the last one was $372 million below the benchmark. So that's a little bit concerning. So that's why we're being conservative in our estimate of state aid. Expenditures for town and Norfolk Public Schools, we're utilizing the assumption of 4% growth in our budgets, and then projected increase of 6% in regional, tri-county, and the ag schools, generally because of information that we receive of higher sort of assessments there. Preliminarily, we'll know as we dive into the budget. Health insurance rates, they've been rising for pretty much all municipalities. GIC was at 10%, I believe, this year. Generally, we have been on the higher end of health insurance rates lately, so we're using about a 9% assumption of rate of growth moving forward. And then the pension funding schedule that's in the forecast, that's based on the latest schedule that was given to us by the county. So those are what we anticipate will be the pension schedule. It isn't finalized, but that's pretty recent. We received that in December. And also, I know this is something that the board had talked about previously, the goal has always been to fully fund pensions by 2030. And I think that's something that had, previous town administrator had talked about, hey, this is probably going to happen. It freed some funds to utilize in the operating budget. Based on the county's, sort of assessment and rate of return, that projected fully funding of the pension is going to be in 2035 now. So that has been pushed out a little bit. So I think that's important to talk about and let people be aware of that. And then generally, I know the board's aware of this, but, collective bargaining is a really important component of, expenditures. Where we're at right now is clerical and DPW are settled through fiscal year 27, and we are currently discussing engaged in collective bargaining with the police and fire, and I think schools is up in a year or so. And so those are the assumptions with the forecast. And we're not going to go slide by slide in the forecast because there's a lot of information there. So we try to take out the most important and pertinent parts. So on this slide, this is generally the forecast slide, the revenue and expenditures. So on these slides, just high level, at the top level, you'll see the general fund revenues. And this is, once again, generally assumptions, particularly when we look at, local receipts, state aid, et cetera. And when we get to the actual slides, we're breaking out property tax. We'll go through state aid and local receipts. And then we have the general fund expenditures. If you look at fiscal year 26 column, you'll see the deficit of $1,474,000. You'll see our annual projected growth of 4.3% in expenditures and 1.6% in revenue growth from the preceding year. And when we get there, we'll explain why that is, because I know people generally know we grow our budget by 2.5% in revenue. We can explain why it looks like 1.6 this year and how that reflects moving forward. So I'm going to toss to Todd, and we'll probably answer in conjunction, but I'll toss it to Todd to run through the remaining part of the slides. And I want to thank Todd for the work. He was very helpful, and he did the forecast this year. So good job, Todd. Thank you.
Any questions to this point? No? Okay.
It's a great tool. Nice to see it being used. It's a good tool. Thank you.
So next slide would be their property taxes. So on this slide, what you're seeing is the expanded version of the line item from the general revenues where we're talking about the property taxes. And what we do is we take the levy limit, we add 2.5%, which is the Prop 2.5 that we're allowed by law. We add in new growth, or what we anticipate for new growth, and then we get a total tax levy limit. And in fiscal year 26, we expect that to be about $41,130,000. Add in the debt exclusions based on the current schedule, and again, this does not incorporate any excluded debt other than what we have currently on the books. So it does not include the school expansion, schematic design, or anything of that nature. But what we're currently on the books is the $3,865,000. Adding those two components brings us up to a total levy for the town of $44,995,000. And that's what we would base the taxes on in order for us to go out and collect monies based on the property taxes. Next slide. Local receipts. What we try and do here is take our local receipts, which includes motor vehicle excise, meals tax, charges for the various services, fees, investment income, a lot of the items that we looked at as far as the revenues. We take the budgeted amounts that we've had for FY25, and we try to, utilizing past historical trends, kind of incorporate what we anticipate those amounts to increase over year, looking at the trends. So on the far right-hand corner is the projected amounts, roughly in percentage basis, and that's across the board. Again, obviously subject to change year over year for actuals. But again, for FY26, we anticipate a total of $3.722 million in local revenue from the local receipts.
Before you go back, can I just have an example of what miscellaneous non-recurring receipt might be?
So we might have a sale of a house that would go in there. A lot of times we put in the prison mitigation funds that we receive from there, even though it's kind of recurring. It's not the same every year, and we had 1 year where we didn't get
I remember.
what we expected. So I put it there just as a placeholder. So the $300,000 that we typically anticipate is typically going to be the prison mitigation. Also included in the miscellaneous would be items, we have some various fees that might not go into the departmental fee. We get a check for $200, whatever, it would go into a miscellaneous account there.
So like the grant from Council on Aging?
So grants are separate, they go into special revenue fund, or that's going to be created for that particular grant, so that the grant can then have the monies come in and flow out, and it has to be a separate fund for it, so it's not part of the general fund.
Thank you.
Questions? Moving on to state aid. State aid, this is the monies that we receive from Massachusetts, includes the Chapter 70, unrestricted general government aid, AKA the lottery fund, veterans benefits, state-owned land, and then the exemptions for the elderly and the veterans and blinds. Again, looking at the trajectory, the trends in the historical, utilizing those numbers kind of gives us a percentage increase that we use. Again, far right-hand column is across the board, but that's what we are showing for expectations. And each year, I showed you this back in March, so everything's kind of moved forward, but I put in the current FY25. Last time you saw this had FY24, and we were looking for FY25. And at the time, we were doing the budgeting as well, so I kind of incorporated both the budgeting aspect of it as part of the forecast as well. So we were able to tell that in. Again, FY26, once we go through this process, this will be updated with better numbers as we get more information from the state. But right now, we're predicting about 5.4 from the state in total. Next slide is just a breakout. This is basically how the town operates on a graphical component of what is the composition of property taxes, which is 82%, or the very large piece of the pie. The local receipts accounts for 7%. State aid accounts for about 10% in total, and then the other available funds, some of the transfers and things of that sort, is the 1% that, whether it's free cash or what have you, the transfers from the ambulance fund. Next slide.
Before we move on, Todd, I think this is an important slide, particularly as we get into the expenditure section. And the reason why is when you look at the total fiscal year 26 increase in revenue, you see the figure of about 847. Once again, assumptions involved in there. We may get higher in the figures from state aid. Todd and I, when we do look at revenue, we look at, our past 3 years, and when we make calculated decisions, understanding ramifications on free cash, et cetera, about where that revenue can go. But when you get into the expenditure section that we're going to get into right now, you got about $847,000 in additional revenue that we're getting over the preceding year. And just in education alone, the expenditures are going to grow by $1.3 million on a projected assumption basis. So pretty much all your revenue is gone just in that bucket alone. We're not talking about fixed costs. We're not looking at town public safety, which is obviously the next large expenditure category. So that sort of indicates where we are financially in revenue picture. So I think that's really important why we incorporated that chart. We'll dive into expenditures as we get there.
Next chart is debt. This includes non-exempt and exempt for the town in total. Please keep in mind this does not, again, incorporate the schematic design that's going to be voted on February 1st. And it also does not include the Tri-County debt assessments. The KP debt assessment is not included in here. The KP debt assessment will roll off in 2026. And that's approximately about $500,000 for our assessment, again, dependent upon what our actual assessment is. And we'll get that information from KP when they provide us their budget update. And that'll be incorporated into the both this forecast as well as the budget component. But this breaks it out. General fund, non-exempt, and again, we talked about the ban earlier. We had $593,000 that we're utilizing for 25. It drops down to $499, and to kind of keep it a little bit levelized, incorporates that $75,000 a year plus interest for the ladder truck. So that's the method on that particular component. The next section is general fund exempt debt, which would include the fire station, the police station, and the construction of the school from 2012, which was the original Freeman Kennedy. So those numbers equate to $1,600,000 in total. I'm sorry, $3,378,000 for 2026. And then the water department has their own debt, and that amount of $609 would be included in their budget as the component for the debt for 2026. Any questions on the debt? Next slide is the allocated expenditures chart. This breaks out, what do we spend our money on? Well, 56%, which is the green, education. Some of the numbers that are not included in the education are on the town side, and as we have a lot of components that are participated in the education component, i.e. facilities maintenance, electricity, things of that sort that are in the town side budget, and a couple of the debt items that are not included there. But basically 56% would go to education. Public Works is 5%. We have debt service, which is approximately the 1% total. General government comprises of about 8%, and public safety is at 14%. And our fixed costs, which are pretty much the employee costs and things of that sort, comprise about 15% overall of the budget. Next slide. This is an expenditure summary by function, primarily. Again, we have it broken down as I presented to you the quarterly. You see the expenses broken down by function. This is broken down by function, a little bit expanded. Employee benefits, we have insurance, the two debt components, and then we have the state assessments. And it's done again by year under those assumptions that we discussed earlier, what we anticipate the projections to be for those items. So for FY26 in total, expenditures to be about $56,138,701. Next slide, expenditure schools. Here again, looking at the expenses for schools, we have four components: the Norfolk Elementary, the King Philip Regional Assessment, the Norfolk Agricultural Assessment, and the Tri-County Assessment. Tri-County Assessment is based on a current component of number of students there. We've been provided notice that there's going to be 10 additional students there, so the assessment's probably going to go up, as well as potential for the debt assessment, because again, that was based on an overall Norfolk being comprised of about 4.3% of the overall budget. But if the number of kids are going up, that 4.3% will probably most likely go up as well.
My memory of the King Philip is that number fluctuates more than I see it fluctuating on the chart.
King Philip is a trend, and Jim will love to try and figure out what the number
formula is
on each year. Again, forecasting is saying we're taking the number and we're expanding it up on a somewhat of a not straight line, but a trend upwards. You are correct in that King Philip could go up and it could go down. It's all based on number of kids that are going there. Once we get the information from King Philip, this will be reflective of the new revised number, and then we'll go based off of that actual amount to forecast
for the next year.
It is a wild guess, and he's right. I've tried for years to try and forecast that number, and I've been unsuccessful every time. Rentham last year literally had a zero allocation. There's the mandatory component, and then there's the allocation component, and their allocation component was literally just about zero. It's based on, it's a convoluted formula based on wealth, median income, and percentage of students. And it's a wild card. I think 6 is actually a pretty fair number for that.
Next slide. So this is the fixed cost, which was about the 15% component of the overall budget expenditures. It consists of medical insurance, longevity, Medicare, unemployment compensation. The biggest one, or second biggest one, tied for both. Retirement and medical insurance are the two biggest components of this. And again, projecting this to be about $7.1 million for the year of 26. And then, as we talked about earlier, medical insurance, we anticipate that about 9% a year. Obviously, once we get the new rates in, we update that, and then going forward, I'll expand that out. Next slide. Public safety. This is both fire, police, building, animal control, animal inspector. All these expenses are included in here. So we have the salaries for the entire function of the public safety, their expenses, and then the MEC assessment. Again, the MEC assessment is based on numbers that we received, and each time that we receive new numbers for whatever component, we'll update those in here so that we have good information going forward, realistic numbers. But in total, it's about $7 million for the year.
All right, and finally, in terms of the fiscal year 26 budget next steps, so this is the next component after the forecast, obviously, and then obviously if you have any questions, but departments are currently working on their departmental submissions. We had some eager beavers who are already ready to submit them, but we anticipate that we will get all of them by February 6th, and then after that time, Todd and I review, we meet with department heads, and then obviously we'll come up with a preliminary budget, and we anticipate we'll present that to the board at the March 4th Select Board meeting. Obviously, this year, as part of our budget memo and something that we talk with department heads about, is we're going to revisit any fees once again. Take a look at that and see if there's ways to increase revenue. I think that's really important for us to continue to take a look at. And then, one of the discussions we're going to have to, talk about is how much free cash do we utilize to balance the budget. I think clearly we're going to have to utilize one-time source of funds. We've talked about this before. The question is how much of those funds do we utilize to balance the budget, understanding that it has an impact on us long-term, has impact on capital, et cetera. So that's an important conversation to have. And obviously as part of a budget process, when you go into the budget, you look at everything. You look at a whole host of possibilities, and then we try to tailor, based on direction from the board and what we think may be sensible, but we'll look at a variety of things, and that includes, whether it's a reduction in services, we'll look at, departmental reorganizations, we'll look at positions, we look at everything, and that's just part of a budget process. And then we come back and talk as a group about what we think is best. And then also as this fiscal year budget, we will talk about the financial guidelines that we've talked about setting as a goal. I think it's prudent probably to implement some sort of financial guidelines while we're talking about the budget. It makes sense. We're going to be meeting with advisory, we're going to be talking with you. So hopefully as part of this budget process, we'll have sort of a general formal financial guideline moving forward. So that's our next steps. It's going to be a busy few weeks, but we're looking forward to that, and we're looking forward to present a budget to the board. That's our forecast. You have the nitty-gritty. We also can provide the Excel if you want to play around with it on your own, but we're here to answer any questions. I'll just emphasize again, a lot of assumptions in there. As we get the figures, we nail them down, then we get to a more budget process, but that's where we're at the moment.
Okay, questions, anyone?
No, I thought it looked good. I did have a recommendation made, to steal this for 1 second. There's one place where it says selectmen.
We will adjust that for you.
Sorry. I'm sorry to be such a...
No.
It's near the back. It's on this page with the 2 yellow stripes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yep.
I did notice the received stamp is much improved. Thank you.
Kevin, any questions?
Nope.
Todd, thank you very much.
It's excellent. It's exciting. Well, it's not, it's got some scary numbers, but it's exciting to be able to look long like that. I think that's really helpful.
Thank you, Todd.
All right, sir.
What's our next
Town
thing?
administrator.
Oh, updates. Quickly, I know Blair stayed here to add. I don't think he's going to add anything, but correct me if I'm wrong, Blair. We did ask the state for some information regarding the Park Street Bridge. We did share that on the town website. Generally, we've heard information from the state that they're doing some load assessments on the bridge. Short story is that work is going to keep the bridge out of commission from 3 to 4 months just for that work alone. So, I know there's been some questions from the community. We've received a lot of emails. I know the board has, I know Blair has. Do we have a timeline? We don't have a timeline, but we know that work is going to be 3 to 4 months. That's the latest I heard from the state. Blair, have you heard anything different?
They have not been very forthcoming.
There we go. So that's the latest regarding the Park Street Bridge. A quick opioid abatement funds update. In the board's packet, we provided you some applications we've already received. My plan regarding that is to have this as an agenda item for the board at its next meeting. We've invited those who have submitted applications to be present because, one, the people that have submitted applications are people that received funds previously. So I've asked them to be prepared to talk about what they've utilized those funds for and then talk about their new projects. So the next board meeting, I think that's an agenda item for you guys to consider allocating funds if you want to.
I did notice on the one application, part of the money was towards salaries.
Yes.
Can we just make sure that that's an acceptable use?
We will make sure that everything's an acceptable use. It's pretty prescribed what you can do. Generally speaking, I did not dive into the application. I wanted to share it with the board so you have some time to look at it. Generally, salaries, if it's for prescribed opioid abatement use, it is acceptable. But before the board's there, I'll definitely make sure
Thank you, sir.
you're aware if it's eligible or not. That's all I have there regarding that. I believe Jim is going to talk about the temporary respite center update.
We had a call last Thursday. It is, I don't want to say it's changing dramatically, but nothing that we didn't expect. The shelter is pretty much at capacity, which is 405 people. There have been some changes to the pre-shelter site. One of the things that was brought up and that we questioned and got the answer we hoped for, there was a public statement regarding Corey checks for backgrounds on folks. There are different types of shelters throughout the state, and the issues around Corey checks have been primarily around hotels and situations of that nature where they have fallen through the cracks. Every family that has come to the Norfolk shelter has had a Corey check. Without question. So they've all had criminal background checks and have been cleared. And that was reassuring to us. And we continue to have absolutely no public safety issues whatsoever with the shelter. So that's the good news. The bad news, if it is to be called bad news, is that we are getting more and more students in our schools. Not unanticipated. We expected it. I think folks know that we were able to receive $250,000 from the state, a substantial grant to make some renovations to the building. It isn't a long-term solution, but it is a short-term use of space that allows us some more space to accommodate these kids. And that work was completed over the Christmas vacation and is available for use, is in use at this particular point in time. So we've gotten quite a bit from the state that other communities have not gotten. And I think that's attributable to the fact that we've built at least a working relationship with them and things have gone well. The Heading Home folks have done a good job of managing the facility. We have to give credit where credit is due. We've had no issues whatsoever. Kevin has not had any cars stolen from across the street, what have you, and I say that facetiously, and you know that. But, it has gone as well as it could go, but we are having an increase in enrollment. We anticipate in KP that we're going to be averaging somewhere between 24 and 26 students during the course of the winter. It's a manageable number for KP. We have the space, we have the teachers, we have the accommodation. That includes Plainville, by the way, not just Norfolk. The elementary school is a little different. We do expect that we're going to be seeing between 32 and 40 students on average. There's no real hard and fast number because there are folks, families coming in and going out. It's a somewhat of a revolving door. They are trying their very best to limit the families that come here in terms of the number of school-age children. Currently, they're averaging about one school-age child per family. They've worked very hard with us, but I don't know how much they're really going to be able to control that because all of the facilities are at capacity. So it is what it is. But they have paid for 2 teachers here in Norfolk and 1 teacher in King Philip to accommodate this. Those salaries are fully paid by the state, in addition to the $250,000 we received. And we are receiving funding for every student that attends our school. So financially, this is not a budgetary issue to the town. It's certainly not, we're not making money, but it isn't impacting our budgets, and that's the good news. What it is impacting is just the space and the considerations associated with having 30 to 40 kids unanticipated in our school system. But the schools seem to be dealing with it pretty well, given the situation that we're in. It is still a moving target. It seems like every 2 or 3 weeks they tweak this, they tweak that. It's been one heck of a 6-month ride, I guess is the best way to describe it. And I think that our real concern right now is just the number of students we have in our schools. Public safety seems to be well-managed and become a non-issue to us. Hopefully it continues. We have 387 individuals and 127 families as of last Thursday currently in the facility, capacity being 405, so they're pretty much full. Did I miss anything?
That's pretty comprehensive.
Yeah. Our next meeting will be a week from Thursday. We're on a 2-week cycle right now, unless something happens that we need to meet more urgently, if you will. We've been able to do it on 2-week cycles now over the last month or so, where prior to that we were meeting weekly. I don't think that we're going to see any dramatic changes to this, and I think we're going to see consistently between the 24 to 26 at KP and the 32 to 40 in Norfolk. The weather's cold, people can't stay outside, these buildings will be at capacity, and we're doing our very best to manage it. And so far, we've managed to stay even with it. So that's the best I can tell you at this point. They have worked well with us on this. I think you would agree, Justin. You've been in all the calls with me on this. We've had some painful conversations, and these are not policymakers that we're working with. These are implementers. And, they're handed down direction, and they have to deal with it just as we have to deal with what they share with us. But we've had good, open communications, and it's helped us. It's helped us secure funding. It's helped us to get preemptive. We had an ambulance there, which never left the building, so it seemed a waste of both of our efforts to try and keep it there, and that has not continued to be a problem for our public safety people. It's been okay. Fire chief and police chief have been very pleased with the way they've managed the property. So, again, I think really the watch out for us right now is just the number of students in our schools, which we're not going to have a lot of control over, to be honest, because they're pretty much at capacity in all these facilities. And that's the latest and greatest. Questions? I don't know that I can answer anything more than that. Justin, anything?
Regards to that, no.
Okay.
Just one other item before you get to your next warrants. We did mention when we did have Dr. Alardi, in-person early voting is currently ongoing for that project, for the school schematic design. And it started today. The hours are on our website, but I did tell Carol I would just quickly mention them tonight. So it's 8 to 8 p.m., Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday of this week. Friday is 9 to 5 p.m., Friday and Saturday and Sunday is 9 to 5 p.m. and then Monday 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. So if you're interested, take advantage of that.
This is a very important issue to folks, and please vote. Please, whatever your view, however you feel, vote. That's what's important. We've gone through this process because we feel that the town should have the opportunity to vote on this. We've put all of the slides up on our webpage. It will be the same presentation that's on the school's webpage. So we've managed to get through the numbers and come to some agreement. It is a moving target, but I think we've got our best guess on both sides now, and that information is available. And our whole role has been to get information to you. Questions here with Ingrid tonight were questions we've heard that we asked, and she gave very good answers to. It's important to be informed. This is a big vote, and be informed. Get information. I don't know. Anything else, Justin?
Not on my end.
Mr. Roach?
Nope, all set.
Ms. Mecklenburg?
I just want to share that this weekend is the Massachusetts Municipal Association conference in Boston, where all the select boards, well, most of the select boards from Massachusetts gather, and the mayors and the town administrators, and also our state elected officials. And it's a very exciting opportunity for us to talk with other communities who are dealing with similar things and different things than what we are. And we're looking forward as a board to attending, and Justin will be joining us, and we'll come back smarter. So we will.
I hope so.
We will.
I hope so.
So that's coming forward this weekend, and we look forward with sharing our new learnings.
They are good meetings. I've been going to them forever, and I've found them very informative. It's good to share pros and cons of issues we all deal with. A lot of our communities are very similar in kind, and we have similar concerns, similar issues, and collective wisdom is always better than our individual wisdom. So hopefully we will come back a little smarter.
That's the plan.
That's the plan. Any other comments from the board?
I'd just like to give a special thanks to the DPW for doing such a good job on plowing, sanding the roads. I thought the roads were very good in this town compared to a few other towns weren't quite as good. They were very good, so.
Excellent, nice job.
You're maintaining a strong tradition.
This is the man that deserves the credit right here.
Justin, anything from you, sir?
Nothing further, thank you.
So we have a couple more little business items.
We have the warrant. Yep.
I move to approve the warrants as listed in the agenda.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And I'd like to make a motion to approve the minutes of the meeting of January 4th, 25.
Second.
No discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Any other business before the board? I have a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Should there be any debate?
No.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you all.